I don't think I recognized the severity of his sickness. I didn't. At that age, you still think you're invincible. And I had never had anyone that was even close to me die. So to have, these people who are part of my paternal, family, but I've never known, call me and sort of drop this sort of bomb, I think I just kind of froze.
Who am I?
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 This is Who Am I, Really? A podcast about adoptees that have located and connected with their biological family members. I'm Damon Davis, and on today's show is Serena. She called me from Virginia shortly after I met her at the Maryland Podcasters Association meetup. She told me she had a similar experience to what a lot of adoptees feel, even though she grew up with her birth mother. I'm always thinking about empathizing with others, so I wanted to hear her story. Serena told me about her birth on a Native American reservation in Arizona, then her mother moving away. She was adopted by her father when he married her mother, but Serena never knew her biological father. When her paternal family called to say her birth father was ill, she was too stunned to act quickly, so she only met his relatives at a chaotic funeral. Take a moment to listen to the parallels between what I'll call Serena's adoption-adjacent experience and those of other adoptees. This is Serena's journey. Serena was born on the Navajo Reservation in Fort Defiance, Arizona, but her mother was only 18 at the time, living with a friend because her own mother and grandmother had moved to Colorado. Her mother wanted to stay behind to finish high school at Window Rock, another Navajo reservation. That's when she
met a boy, fell in love, got pregnant. My mom is so freaking smart. She is God. She puts anything I feel like I'll ever do to shame. She gave birth to me and then very shortly after flew across the country and came to the DC area and did her undergrad at Georgetown.
Gotcha.
So I think it was something like 2 or 3 weeks after giving birth, because I was a little late.
Wow.
I was in the care of my grandmother for I think my first 2 years out in Wyoming, while my mom sort of got her academic career started here. And it's a rough transition being from a reservation and living out west and coming out here. It's a pretty big culture shock, coming from a very small place where a lot of the people you see are like you or related to you, or you have a common culture, to someplace like DC.
Her mother established herself in the D.C. area, then sent for Serena when she was 3 years old. Her birth father, John, moved to Alexandria, Virginia, too, and they made a go at being a young family together.
For whatever reason, that didn't work out, and eventually she met and fell in love with my father. So my father is the person who's been my dad my entire life. He's my dad. He's my father. That's why I kind of use the term birth father for John, because I don't really have anything else other than pictures and not even very many stories with him. I think, this sort of thing is just for the people that live through it. It's so long ago that you don't talk about it. But then at some point I kind of, told my mom, like, I'm missing a couple gaps in my life here.
Yeah, right. And just for the record, is John Native American as well?
Yes.
Okay,
so
that's what I thought.
I'm 3/4 Navajo. He was full-blooded, and my mom is half.
Gotcha. And may I ask, what is her other half?
Swedish.
Serena told me that her grandmother was part of the Native American boarding school system, which removed her from the reservation and sent her away to boarding school. When she finished school, the work placement program landed her a job as a secretary with NASA in Southern California. That's where she met Serena's maternal grandfather, a Swedish rocket scientist. I asked Serena to circle back to her early years back in Arizona with her grandmother while her own mom was in D.C. She, of course, doesn't have any memory of that time, but she did say,
my grandmother and I have always had this intensely close bond.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, just something because, she helped raise me when I was itty bitty. And my grandmother had 6 kids and my mom was the second oldest. So I still had 3 aunts and a uncle that were there when I was a baby. So I've just heard stories about how the girls would just take me and bathe me and dress me up and put me in dresses and bows. I was just like their little doll.
Serena said she used to go back and visit her aunts and uncles who weren't too much older than herself. She went on to tell me about her dad, Steve. He and her mother were married for only a few years, divorcing when she was about 8 years old. They had one daughter, Serena's sister, Sarah.
It's so funny because, biology is just, it's biology, There's no sentiment behind that.
It's very scientific.
We've never been half, thanks. We've never referred to each other as, this is my half sister. No, she's always just been my sister and we've always just been sisters. And I'm, very tan skin, dark hair, dark eyes, and she's got that very, very fair skin, freckles, light brown hair that can go auburn, and like blue eyes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, you guys sound like you look very different from one another.
Serena said among her sisters, they may not look alike, but they share many of the same mannerisms. She lived in the D.C. area most of her life, and with a 12-year gap between them, they had to work at a familial bond. You're probably wondering if Serena grew up with her mother, then how is this an adoption story? Bear in mind, adoption can take many forms. Hers was adoption by marriage. Serena talks about how she learned that Steve had adopted her as his daughter and how she felt different from her dad, like other adoptees sometimes feel with their families.
So when Steve and my mom got married, he actually adopted me.
Mm-hmm.
So on my birth certificate, there's his name, and I have a weird memory of like being in kindergarten, and like how they put a little laminate thing and tape it down to your desk, and that's where you sit, and that's your name, and that whole jam. But I didn't recognize my last name because I think it was still my birth father's last name, but I just knew that wasn't my last name.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I think that they started the adoption process probably sometime around then.
So Serena was a kid who grew up with one last name, but suddenly in school, her name tag on her desk had a different name. Serena was about 8 years old when her mother and Steve divorced. They were living in Virginia. He lived in Maryland, and they would trade off visits with him. She said around 11 years old, the curiosity hit her about whom her biological father could be, so her mother tried to find her birth father, John, using an old address she had for his parents. Serena wrote him letters, and he responded that he was remarried and had a son, and that was it for Serena. Her curiosity was satisfied. She established a connection, and she didn't need anything else at that moment as a kid. What she says next is just one of the things that aligns Serena's story with other adoption journeys.
I feel like I definitely felt different after they got divorced. And like I said, like Sarah's always been my sister. My dad has always been my dad, but they look very similar. Like you can see the similarity between Sarah and my dad.
And Steve,
it was always a little weird and awkward. And, at this point, like I'm about 8 years old. And so you're just starting to kind of notice the differences between you and your peers.
Right.
And so there were definitely times where I was starting to notice how I maybe looked like Sarah's friend. Like you wouldn't look at us, I feel like way back then in the early 90s and think, oh, that's a dad and his 2 daughters. Or at least that's not how I felt.
When Serena was about 12, her mother moved back to Arizona to pursue her law degree with a concentration in tribal law. But the move changed the game for visiting Steve. She lived in Arizona until she was about 16 when she returned to Maryland to live with her dad, basically as an only child for her senior year in high school. Steve had a different parenting style from Serena's mother.
A little bit more relaxed and kind of, he gave us space and we had to learn to respect that freedom and space. And when we didn't, there were consequences, which wasn't very often, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just different. It was lonely being an only child because I was used to being in a house filled with other people. So it was definitely lonely for a little while.
Steve really encouraged Serena's creative side, taking her to craft stores and museums. But the weather in D.C. was too much, so she moved back to Arizona, where she attended Arizona State University.
Right around the time I think I was 18 or 19 at most, my birth father's family got in contact with me and said that, John, my birth father, was in the hospital and he was asking for me and that he was really sick.
What did you think
And
or feel when you heard that?
That just blew my mind.
Why is that?
I could tell they felt much closer to me than I did to them, because when you're as young as I was, 1, 2, 3 years old, I don't remember these people. I can't put faces to names, and no one likes to relive their breakups. So it's never really been something that I pushed with my mom to get information about. I mean, when I told her I wanted to have a conversation about it, she had no problem with it and is willing to, let me know whatever I want to know. But just, at those ages of being a kid, being a teenager, being a young adult, it just seems like a really awkward conversation to have.
So
Pregnant at 17, eh?
Yeah, right. Your paternal family has reached out to you and said, your biological father is in the hospital and he's asking for you. I assume you told your mom. And just tell me what happened next. Yeah, what happened next then?
I sat on it. I don't think I recognized the severity of his sickness. I didn't. At that age, you still think you're invincible. And I had never had anyone that was even close to me die. So to have, these people who are part of my paternal, family, but I've never known, call me and sort of drop this sort of bomb, I think I just kind of froze and was like, whoa, this is a lot. I don't know this person. I share blood and DNA with this person, but I don't know this person. And I also, I have a dad. I don't know what I have to offer in this scenario. I think probably I didn't want to deal with it. Didn't want to think about it. Didn't think it could be as severe as it was.
Serena said it wasn't long before John passed away from cirrhosis of the liver in his late 30s. His paternal family called to share the tragic news.
It definitely hit me. It had a bigger impact then.
Serena was in college, broke, and unable to travel to the funeral. So she talked to Steve, who gave her some money to make the trip. But she said the decision to go through with the trip was a tough one to make.
It took me a while to kind of wrestle with, do I go? Do I not go? And ultimately, I came down to talking to my dad about it because, I didn't want him to feel bad if I went. I didn't know how he would feel, but I didn't want him to feel like it was in any way lessening my love and feelings for him by going and kind of wrapping this up.
Yeah.
He's a smart, caring guy. So I think, he got that and was, willing to help support me in going up there and sort of getting this closure that I needed. I was born on the reservation, but I've never grown up on a reservation.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been fully exposed to a lot of, what goes on there at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the funeral, and the funeral was a mess. You are not going to believe this. So it was I guess what's considered to be a traditional burial. Nothing too fancy. Like, it's a desert up there. I just remember it being, dirt ground, and everyone's like standing there, and I'm kind of in the front. And there's, the pile of dirt, and you see the pallbearers coming, and it occurred to me, I was like, how are they going to walk around this dirt? How are they going to lower this into the hole in the ground? And it all happened pretty quickly, and all of a sudden someone slipped or something happened, and the casket goes head first into the ground and just flips over.
Oh no.
There is this horrible, like, cracking sound, and then all the women just scream, and then everyone starts to scramble, and at that point it's like the casket's in the ground, but it's just went in head first and flipped over. So essentially, I think the body would be laying like face down.
Oh no.
That's one of those things I'll never forget. After they sorted that all out, I don't even remember what they did. I just remember just like the shock and horror of it all. I guess like funeral reception, there were just so many people that were coming up to me and hugging me and introducing themselves to me, and all people that, it was a real honor to feel so much love from these people that were, to me, strangers, but to them, it really felt like I was family.
Serena said it was hard to reconcile her feelings as a stranger with their open welcome as John's daughter. During the eulogy, someone commented that John had moved to Virginia to be with his daughter Serena, but she couldn't remember ever living with the man. She was only 3. One really poignant moment did happen in the midst of all the awkwardness.
My paternal grandfather was just overjoyed to see me.
Really?
And he's just, like this old, skinny man, and I don't even remember that, like, we really talked that much, because I don't know how old he was, but my boyfriend at the time had said, wow, like, to see that, to see how happy you've made this man, like, you really should try to, keep in touch with this side of your family. It clearly left a mark on him, how happy it made my paternal grandfather to see me and hug me and reconnect with me.
Yeah.
In that arena.
All of this happened in the early 2000s. Serena met her paternal sibling, Mike, whom she keeps in touch with online these days. She doesn't travel to Arizona very often, so she's hoping to see him the next time she's in Phoenix. Serena said after the funeral, there was no huge crucial conversation with her mother or her adopted father. So I asked her what she thought about when she reflects on never meeting John.
Mainly just like we were talking about before, the ways that and the mannerisms that families share that you don't always pick up on until later. What are the weird, quirky things that I do that, may have come from him. My mom is in no way artistically inclined, but from what I understand, like, he was pretty good at some art things. There's parts of you physically that don't match up to sides of your family.
Yeah.
But you can see how they match up for, I can see what physical traits Sarah got from my mom and my dad. I can see the physical traits that Catherine and Michael got from our mom and their dad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any other point of comparison aside from, pictures that my mom gave me from when I was a baby with the two of them, or, it's like I can see parts of my facial structure that's different, that's more similar to him, but I've never seen that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you're right. You don't get the benefit of hearing the similar quirks and the stories of things that you have been interested in that he's also interested in, or what have you. It's tough when you don't get to meet a biological parent. Fascinating, Serena. This has been really interesting. Everybody's story is so different. And, the fact that your father adopted you, divorced your mother, but, really did continue to be your dad. Not all dads do that.
Oh, yeah. No.
And
no, yeah.
Yeah. Steve sounds like a really good guy. And
he is.
I'm sorry you didn't get to meet John. I think that could have been really meaningful. Well, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate your time today.
Of course, and my pleasure. It's nice. I like having these conversations that, you don't just have.
Yeah, right. These aren't the kinds of things that just come up.
Thank you so much, Damon.
You're welcome. All the best to you, Serena. Take care. I'll see you at the next podcast meetup.
Okay.
All right, then. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hey, it's me. What I heard in Serena's story is a lot of the same emotional roller coaster that, for lack of a better term, traditional adoptees feel when we're trying to figure out who we are. There was the change of identity when she was young, but old enough to know that her last name was changed. There was the loyalty she felt to Steve while wondering who John was as the man who was one half of her earthly life. And Serena talked about not wanting to press her mother for details about the circumstances of her birth and her introduction to new siblings she had never met. I think you see now why I called her experience adoption adjacent. I'm Damon Davis, and I hope you'll find something in Serena's journey that inspires you, validates your feelings about wanting to search, or motivates you to have the strength along your journey to learn, who am I, really? If you would like to share your adoption journey and your attempt to connect with your biological family, please visit whoamireallypodcast.com/share. You can choose to share your whole story, maintain some privacy about parts of your journey, or share completely anonymously. You can find the show at facebook.com/WAIReally or follow me on Twitter @WAIReally. And please, if you like the show, you can support me at patreon.com/WAIReally. You can subscribe to Who Am I Really on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, it would mean so much to me if you would take a moment to share a rating or leave a comment. Those ratings can help others to find the podcast too.